recording, start streaming, go live, pull up the rundown. Oh, it's red. It's red. Red's not good, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your fantasy football home over at figpigskin.com. I'm your host, Kyle Robert. You can follow me on Twitter at NotoriousRO. With me tonight, from the man cave, from the dog pound, it's Ron the Mad Dog McLeese. What's up, Ron?
Hey, ready for some football. You know, we got a little taste, got a little tease with the Hall of Fame game. Obviously, not that many big time starters playing any, length of period of time, but there were a couple guys that flashed, and Rico Gathers was definitely one of them. And also your Bryce Butler dynasty shares, you might get a little bit of, you might still hold on to him a little bit longer.
No.
So
if anyone in your league is talking like Ron and saying Bryce Butler is going to be a thing, sell. I did see Blaine Gabbert look like a future Hall of Famer. I mean, he might as well just stay in Canton after that performance. He looked incredible for a while. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It was good to see football on my TV for sure. Did you watch most of it, all of it, done of it? Where were you at?
I'll be honest, I caught bits and pieces of it. I did not watch the full entirety of the game. For me, I just want to see more star power out there. I want to see a few more guys, but it is interesting to watch, preseason football because you have all the position battles, players fighting to make the team, players fighting to their way up on the depth chart to see where they can get. And, that's the interesting storyline, I think, of preseason games altogether. And then, some of the bigger name players actually getting to play in these games, whether it be just one series or two.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Like week 2, week 3 of the preseason is my wheelhouse. It's when I get really excited. That's when I watch a lot. I like to see, how are these quarterbacks targeting? I think there's going to be obviously a lot of new guys under center this year or new receivers catching passes. And, we want to see if the receiver and the quarterback are on the same page, where they're going to be looking, who they might be either trying to work in or trying to figure out, or someone who has good rapport with. And I think, those games can be really important. I think, if the NFL, I think they have through their website, you can get, all the preseason games. You can watch some cut-ups. I think that's just incredibly important as you're trying to make decisions on kind of the back end. And we'll be here to help you throughout the preseason, previewing all the divisions, getting you everything you need to know. We are going to talk some AFC East, Ron. I know there was a big signing, and we'll get to him here in a second. But I felt like it was a good guy to jump, a good division to kind of go with, and obviously use the big news as our jumping off point. Let's talk about those Miami Dolphins. Ryan Tannehill out for the season. He's dealing with that knee issue that was a big problem, obviously, to end last year. Torn ACL, done for the year. And here comes my boy, straight from Chi-Town, hopped on a plane, flew down to South Beach. He's ready for a nice long season. It's Jay Cutler. I know you're so excited to see that.
I'm just going to go throw out my dinner now. I just had it before we came on. No, I'm not really excited about it. I mean, I'm not excited to see Jay Cutler again in the NFL, having watched him for so many years in Chicago. But I will say that, this is probably the best option they could possibly have, had to come in, obviously with the history with Gase. They've had, having coached him in the past in Denver. So there's definitely that connection. And there's also all these, targets that we're going to talk about, we're going to get to. But I think that's the only thing that kind of gets me a little excited for those skill position players, more so than, just Jay Cutler being a Miami Dolphin and him getting to come back. But obviously, I said this before, and I'll say it again. He wasn't going to come back as a backup. He has way too much pride.
Yep.
There's no way this guy walks onto the field, signs a contract unless he's the starter. I don't care where it is.
Yep. And a little nugget for you there, Ron. Jay Cutler's better than Ryan Tannehill. Boom! Drop the bomb.
Well, that just means he can throw the ball more than 20 yards somewhat accurately. So, yeah, I mean, I'll take that.
Is Jay Cutler the best quarterback in the state of Florida?
Ooh, that's a strong.
I mean, obviously, it's not. It's are you Jameis Winston or Jay Cutler? Like, I don't know.
Oh, I'm definitely Winston. I mean,
I don't know. I
I thought
obviously.
maybe you were taking a shot at Blake Bortles, and I would still probably take Bortles over
Mhm.
Cutler, but
I'll
I
take
think
Cuddy all day.
I know you're on the other side of the fence.
Yeah,
So
I'm a crazy person. I did do my rankings today. He was, I believe, quarterback 22. So obviously, I'm being a little facetious, but I do like him as a quarterback. I think he makes more sense for this offense. I do honestly think he's better than Ryan Tannehill. Tannehill is like a 26th in my rankings. So a guy that in Superflex leagues and 2 QB leagues in the Scott Fish Bowl, that we got waivers coming up in a couple weeks. I think he's going to be a guy that a lot of people spend their fab on, and it'll be really interesting to see kind of how it works for this offense. And Ron, I want to start at the running back position with the Dolphins. Obviously, Jay Ajayi, fantasy Twitter darling, guy gaining a ton of steam this offseason. Obviously, I think we're Team Ajayi. We've been there, since the jump. But what do you think Cutler means for Ajayi and kind of the rest of the offense when it means talk in terms of the running game?
well, I think that Chicago, where the offensive line could be better, but it could be a lot worse. I think the main thing here is that you have a running back in Jay Ajayi who's you know more tough as Jordan Howard. I think he's a more between the tackles. I think than Jordan Howard, but maybe not as explosive. My point here is I think that early on in the season, until Jay Cutler kind of gets everything, the whole offense under grasp here, and he feels comfortable with running that offense, I think they're definitely going to on that running game. And I mean, there's nobody else outside of Jay Ajayi to really, you know, challenge him for carries. And I think that's the main reason why I think a lot of us, whether it be dynasty redraft or what have you, we're high on Jay Ajayi because of the situation, because of right now the commitment that they're going to make and they're showing that they're going to make to the running game, and some other things too with him being, he didn't even dress week 1 of last year. A lot of us, scoffed at that, and then we saw what he did, rushing for 200 yards in 3 games, which has only been done by a handful, just a few players, and they're all in the Hall of Fame. So not going to go there, but yeah, he's going to have the workload, and I think this is going to open things up for Jay Cutler, just knowing that he's going to be able to dial up maybe some play action because of Jay Ajayi and what he's been able to do on the ground and should be able to do on the ground if he's healthy. So, and I do think he'll be more involved in the passing game this year. He's worked on that in the offseason, and that's another reason too why I'm pretty optimistic about Jay Ajayi taking that next step forward, especially in PPR leagues where he proved at Boise State he can catch the ball. So it was never like doubted that he couldn't.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of whether or not they trusted him enough in those situations to involve him.
Yeah, obviously Kenyon Drake and Damian Williams will get, sporadic touches. I think Kenyon Drake could be a little more involved, but I'm with you on Ajayi getting involved in the passing game. It is nice to have, Adam Gase there for Cutler. I think that's going to be a big thing for him. He's obviously, there's a familiarity there. And we also have something to look at. I mean, in 2015 when Gase was the OC of the Bears, this was a team that kind of leaned a little more on the run. Made Cutler a smarter quarterback, not so many turnovers, that kind of stuff. So, if you're an Ajayi guy and you see Cutler coming to town, that's great. That means that Gase is going to lean on the run, let Cutler make throws when he needs to make throws. And I think this Dolphins team actually, they went 10-6 last year. I mean, 10-6, 11-5. I don't think that's out of the question again. The biggest question, I guess, for me for Ajayi and like a top 5 running back type season, which I'm really anticipating for, for some of our longtime listeners, I took Ajayi number 4 in the Scott Fish Bowl after the big 3 running backs. So, obviously I do like him in terms of as a running back. But Marquise Pouncey has to be there. The games when Ajayi was running for 200 yards in a game and doing big things, Pouncey was on the field. He was helping that offensive line. He's a big part of what they do. The games where Pouncey was off the field, Pouncey was hurt, that's when the running game kind of came to a head. So, you'll have to really pay attention to that. I'm buying in. I'm getting Ajayi where I can. I'm gladly taking him in the first, or if I'm, on that swing pick at first, second round, I will gladly take him anywhere in that range. Now, Ron, let me ask you a question because I was thinking about this earlier today, and I think for me, Devontae Parker of all the pass catchers is your big winner here. I wasn't a huge Parker
Almost.
guy. Yeah, I wasn't a huge
Mhm.
Parker guy coming into this. I was like, I was kind of, I'm not a huge fan of him kind of in general, but Devontae Parker with Jay Cutler, we've known his history where, he kind of likes to lean on one guy, and I think that's, the Dolphins in preseason are going to be incredibly important to see who Jay Cutler is kind of leaning on, where he likes to go, and I think Devontae Parker could be your big winner. I mean, Brandon Marshall obviously had massive seasons with Cutler. Alshon Jeffrey, much of the same. We've seen Eddie Royal have a thing. So, obviously he doesn't just need a big passer. But, for me, if I'm looking at a big winner in terms of pass catchers, it's Devontae Parker.
And I'm 100% with you. And I've been waiting for something to get me excited about Parker. And I think all the reports, off-season reports, have been glowing with him as far as him showing that motivation that he's been lacking his first 2 years in the NFL. And I think this is just another thing, another thing that we can read on the wall here as far as the handwriting. And
Yeah.
I feel like he is primed for his biggest season yet. And the thing that Cutler loves the most is he loves to take shots downfield.
Mm-hmm.
He's not afraid to do that. We've seen that in Chicago year after year after year with, like you mentioned, Brandon Marshall, Alshon Jeffrey. But he also loves throwing it up and making those 50-50 throws. And I feel like he is first off going to target probably the biggest target on the field. And I mean, that's going to be Devontae Parker. I mean, he's going to be that biggest target for him to kind of lock in on, especially in the red zone, and to make some big jump ball throws to. So those are the kind of plays that I think that he's going to focus on trying to, build some chemistry with Parker early on this preseason. Hopefully, we see some of that in the games. I'm sure they're going to be seeing it in practice a lot. So that's one thing I'm really excited about, and I think I would agree with you. I think the biggest winner here is Devontae Parker in this whole situation. And you kind of joked about it earlier, and I think the Dolphins as a team, I think they might actually be better with Jay Cutler than Ryan Tannehill, and it's just because of the fact of what we've been talking about with the ability to finally have a quarterback that can throw the ball. We'll take those shots, and we're not kind of it's not everything inside the 20-yard kind of mark is as far as you can go with Tannehill. He's not accurate outside that 20 yards. So it was more of that short intermediate passing game where he made his money, his bread and butter, basically, where Jarvis Landry lives. So,
Mm-hmm.
so that's the one thing is with Landry. I don't know about you, Kyle, but I think this is kind of like it really doesn't move the needle that much for me with Landry. I think he's still going to be that same wide receiver two in PPR leagues, with the ability on some weeks to be a really low end wide receiver one in PPR leagues. So he's still going to get peppered with targets. Make no mistake about that. But I'm definitely more intrigued with Devontae Parker, especially in like redraft leagues now, having sold a couple of my dynasty shares this offseason. I'm a little upset about that, but I still have a few.
Yeah, I'm sure you got nice return on those too. I know there was a lot of people that, despite the not as exactly exciting outlook in Miami, people were still buying those like crazy. But I'm looking at my rankings for this year, and I had Landry for 96 catches and like 1,200 yards, and then I had Parker for 63 catches and 950. Um, do you think that's kind of what you expect from Parker on like maybe like 100 targets, or do you think maybe he gets 120-ish targets and becomes a guy that maybe he pushes over 1,000 yards, maybe he pushes, near double-digit touchdowns? Like, do you think that's in his range of outcomes?
I think he's got a wide range of outcomes, but I think that would be kind of it's definitely in that range. I mean, 120 targets is definitely a little optimistic number to look at, but I definitely think that with this offense with Landry, if he does build that chemistry early on with Parker, I could definitely see him, definitely reaching 100 and 110, 115 could be in play. So, if he somewhere in the neighborhood of 70, maybe to 80 receptions might be in that range of outcomes, and yeah, close to 1,000 yards receiving. I think where he's going to prop up his value and where he's really going to, make money for you as an owner is going to be with the touchdown. So I feel like that's where we're going to see him benefit the most is in the red zone. And if he takes those shots, like I said, one-on-one, just go up and get the ball high pointing. I think that's where Parker's going to win in most cases. And we saw a few of those plays at the end of last year with Tannehill throwing it up, chucking it up to him, and him going up and getting it. So that's one thing I think that we're going to see a lot more of. So I'm definitely really optimistic. Don't want to get too crazy, but I definitely think this is a guy that he's definitely moving up my draft boards.
Yeah, I mean, for somebody going in the middle of the 8th round, around Eric Decker, Randall Cobb, Deshaun Jackson, Cam Meredith, John Brown, like, I think Parker probably has the most upside of that group. I think, to your point, the floor is probably a lot lower for than a lot of those guys. But depending on how my team's shaking out, if I want to go for a little upside, go for a guy who could, pop for 1,000, 1,200 yards and double-digit touchdowns, if everything breaks right, to find that guy in the 8th round, I think would be amazing. And if he doesn't work out for you, and he ends up not, it's the Jarvis Landry show and Parker's kind of useless, well, then you cut him and, you wasted an 8th round pick. I do want to ask you, though, with this news, with Cutler in town, do you think he's probably a guy that ends up going more like late 6th, early 7th round? Kelvin Benjamin, Emmanuel Sanders, Pierre Garçon, Moncrief in PPR leagues?
Definitely putting himself up into that range with the Cutler signing, because I think a lot of people are going to think kind of the same thing that we're thinking, and that's, there's going to be, this has got to help his value. It's got to give him more opportunities to kind of play off of his game and what he was really good at in college. And, that to me, I think that's enough to kind of move the needle for me and put him somewhere in that 6 to 7 round range. I think a lot of those names you mentioned, a few of them, John Brown, yeah, we both love Smokey Brown. But, I think if you're shooting for the stars and you're looking for the upside guy, John Brown's playing second fiddle to Larry Fitz, too. I know,
Yep.
Obviously, he's coming off an injury with the sickle cell. Never know if that something flares up and then he's out for a few games. So there's definitely risk with some of those other guys you mentioned. I think with Parker, the biggest risk may be him, doing something stupid off the field and getting himself in trouble. But I think when he's on the field, if he's motivated, and according to our reports so far this preseason, he's that guy. So he's flashing, and I think that upside to me, that puts him in that range. So there's no doubt in my mind. You're probably not gonna be able to get him in the 8th round or later. You're gonna have to do, pull the trigger in the 6th or 7th. Now.
Are you comfortable taking him in the 6th?
Again, it all depends on how I've kind of structured my picks prior to that. If I have 2 receivers I really can depend on to hang my hat on, and maybe I'm drafting him as, say, my 3rd or 4th wide receiver in that range, I think I'm willing to take that, risk, if it is a risk, because of the upside. I don't really have a problem with that. Taking him over guys like, say, maybe Golden Tate, if he's still there, I'm probably going Golden Tate if I want to go with a safer pick. But I'm definitely taking him over John Brown. I don't know.
Would you
what
take
the
him
other names you mentioned?
Okay, so this is receivers going in the end of the 5th, and early 6th. Devontae Parker or Larry Fitzgerald?
True. In PPR, I think I'm still going Fitz just because it's a safer call.
I think you have to. Same with Jamison Crowder.
Yeah, I'm still going Crowder in that offense because they have that they've worked together ever since Crowder's come up, and
yeah,
I just think that chemistry's there.
Yeah, I think
he's the only really returning guy. He's that guy besides Doxson. He's already hurt. So
yeah, Doxson's already. Willie Snead, Stephon Diggs, Brandon Marshall, Kelvin Benjamin. Those are the next 4 receivers off the board. Are you taking Devontae Parker over any of those guys?
Well, I don't know if you saw it today, Kyle, but they're saying our boy from Ohio State, Glenn, is number 2 ahead of Snead, which I really.
I think
how much do we buy into that?
I think that's a bunch. I love depth charts, especially because they come from the team website and they just put a bunch of players on there. Would it shock me if Willie Snead is running from the slot and is technically your wide receiver 3? But No. Do I think Willie Snead's still going to get, 100 plus targets? Yeah, I do. So I tend not to buy into these depth chart things, and people will post, oh, this guy's getting first team reps today in practice. Like, okay, everyone's getting first team reps at some point. If you're a good running
Yeah,
back
no, I
or
get
you're a
it.
good receiver, but yeah, I mean
I'm
for
probably not taking him over any of those guys. I mean, on that list, Diggs, Benjamin,
Marshall,
Snead. I'm probably not. Hmm,
Marshall and Benjamin would be
Marshall's.
just
Yeah, those two I could see. You could make an argument, but I mean, I think Benjamin still has that touchdown upside. So I'm still kind of leaning Benjamin on that one, but it's
no.
close. I mean,
Yeah. So
I could
early
definitely.
early seventh is probably the range, unless Benjamin Marshall, those guys are off the board. Mark Ingram, C.J. Anderson, are two running backs. Paul Perkins even are going in that sixth round range. And typically the way I start my team, I'm receiver heavy, and then I grab some running backs. So I probably won't be taking one in that sixth round range. Tyler Eifert's there; he's interesting. So yeah, I think we're both on board with that. Early to mid seventh is kind of the range to start really considering Parker. What about beyond those guys? I mean, Kenny Stills obviously had 9 touchdowns last year. We don't expect that to be a trend that carries over. They brought in Julius Thomas to catch passes. He could be a red zone threat. Are you interested in either of those as kind of late round guys that you can just fill out your bench, or JT as a late, if you're just kind of willing to stream tight ends and stuff as a late guy to target?
Uh, Julius Thomas is one of my favorite late round tight end targets this year, along with CJ Fedorowicz. I think these are two guys that may get lost in the sauce, and then you can get them in double digit rounds. Obviously, you have the connection there with Julius Thomas and having his best year in that offensive scheme in Denver. And this is a guy that they're saying that they want to get the ball to, and I think they do want to get the ball to. So it's always been the question. Health's always been his, major question mark, red flag. So if he can remain healthy, I do think that they're going to try and commit to get the ball to him in the red zone. So he's interesting for me, and definitely Stills. You see that home run threat, and he's been that guy. He's just not the kind of guy that in a PPR league I'm going to consistently depend on a
No
week-to-week basis.
chance.
To me, he's more of that no chance. Yeah, he's a
Yeah.
boomer bust. He's more like a bye week type
Yeah.
replacement, bottom of my roster kind of clogger, but he can definitely be useful in those weeks. Or if you had an injury to one of your third or fourth wide receiver on your depth chart, yeah, I mean he's a guy that interests me when it comes to that, and then where you can get him as far as the value late in drafts. So yeah, if he's one of the last few rounds, I see him sitting there. Why not? I mean, like you said, I mean, he's one of those last few picks anyway. You're probably going to end up cutting on bye weeks or what have you. Injuries happen, so
Mm.
um,
Yeah, I love him for best ball. I love him for DFS. I probably won't roster him too much in season long, but for those bye weeks and stuff where you just need a receiver, and maybe he catches a touchdown. He's a great guy to target off the waiver wire. Let's head up to Buffalo and talk about those Bills. LaShawn McCoy still doing it, still an elite running back for fantasy owners. Are you still comfortable taking him in that late first, early second round range? Like, obviously, he just continues to do what he needs to do, and has been an elite running back. Are you expecting that to happen again this year?
yeah, I do. I expect that. I mean, Gillislee's gone. I really think that this is a team that their MO is to run the football. They're going to continue to run the football and do what they can do on the ground, and they have Shady McCoy, and he's still Shady McCoy. The decline hasn't happened yet. He still catches a lot of passes. I mean, these are all things that he's been doing for years, and I still like him a lot. I think I'd probably target him, yeah, in the back end of the first. Probably more of a second round guy to me, beginning of or second round, mid second round. Probably not going to get him that late in some leagues, but
Wh-
depending on how the
Let's
draft
play.
flow goes.
Yeah, let's play a quick name game with him. So would you rather have DeMarco Murray or LaShawn McCoy?
Who I'm probably going to go Shady McCoy.
Jordan Howard or LaShady McCoy?
In PPR, I'm assuming I'm
Let's
going to
go
go Shady
PPR.
McCoy.
Shady
Yeah.
McCoy or Melvin Gordon?
Who I'm actually going to go Melvin Gordon on this one.
What about Devonta Freeman or Shady McCoy?
I'm going. I still think there's going to be a commitment to him
Yeah.
in Atlanta.
Yep. I'm pretty much with you on all those. Murray. I might go Murray over McCoy. That one's close. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot to like about McCoy. Obviously, a really talented back, used a lot. It will be interesting to see now with Greg Roman out of the picture how that offense evolves a little bit. But I do still expect them to stay committed to the run. I expect McCoy to have.
I guess my.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say my issue would be just that there's that Derrick Henry there, and it's like you got to think they're going to try and get him more involved this year. We saw last year in some blowout games and some games that didn't matter. He was more involved against Jacksonville, obviously, a Thursday night game. We saw him kind of come out. But I think that they will try and keep Murray a little more fresh. So I think that's the only reason I would go Shady over Murray's, because I feel like there's going to be there's going to be enough carries siphoned away from Murray by Henry in touchdowns, Vulture, that kind of will sway it one way for me. And I still think it's close, but that's why I would go McCoy.
Yeah, that's fair. And especially, we're talking about Mariota. Well, and we'll get to this more when we do our AFC South preview. But, Mariota's got more weapons, more playmakers. There's a chance that they run in terms of total rushes, they run less. They keep the pie the same. DeMarco Murray's numbers are just going to come down. That's just kind of how it is. So McCoy might be a little bit safer, and that might be the better way to go. And you know what? I think I might change that in my rankings. What about Jonathan Williams, Ron? Obviously a guy that we liked. We saw him at the Senior Bowl. Has a lot of skills. Obviously has an injury-riddled past. We've seen Carlos Williams. We've seen Mike Gillislee be valuable in this offense. Do you think Jonathan Williams is a guy that, in deeper leagues, in bye week potential, could be a guy that's worth stashing? And McCoy has that injury himself where he could vault into a legit role. Is Williams the guy you're targeting?
Well, let me correct you first, Kyle. We saw him at Senior Bowl, and that was about it. We just
he was standing there.
Touch the field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we were standing on the field too, so technically he touched the field. But yeah, there wasn't a lot.
The problem I have. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just saying, there wasn't a lot of activity with him.
Well, he was recovering from an injury, from a surgery, I believe, and that's why he really didn't do much at Senior Bowl. But my issue is buying into him and not really being able to see too much from him in his short time in the NFL. And maybe that's going to be, my loss, because I have to see something. I mean, I know he was really good in Arkansas, and he put up some big numbers. But I haven't seen anything in the NFL to make me think that this guy, one, can handle the load or can even stay on the field and stay healthy, even when he's given, just a few touches here and there. So that's kind of my issues. I think everybody's just quickly buying into the Jonathan Williams hype, and he's got to take up on Gillislee's role, and he has to, be that guy. Well, maybe he doesn't have to. Maybe they try to make him that guy. Maybe he isn't that guy, and it just leads to more carries for McCoy. At the end of the day, I think that they do need to establish someone behind McCoy to be that change of pace running back. He does fit that mold. The question is, can he stay out there all year long and be that guy?
Yeah.
What did Gillislee have? Like 100 and some carries last year, so he was really efficient in those carries.
Right, and the 8 touchdowns. The 8 touchdowns really made him a fantasy performer, and we saw it with Carlos, we saw it with Jonathan, we saw it with Gillislee. So people are kind of going. I mean, he is going basically the very end of the third, very beginning of the fourth, or 13th, 14th round. So I mean, at that point, like I don't hate taking the shot, especially if you could need a running back in the first few weeks, or you are a McCoy owner. I don't hate that. Obviously, like Alvin Kamara is there. He's interesting. You might be taking a tight end like Jacoby Fleener, Austin Hooper, Jason Witten. So, maybe at that point you're not even targeting running backs. But, if you're down that low and there's not a lot to like and he's sitting there, I don't know that I hate the idea. But I have a feeling that he would likely be one of my first cuts for a hot waiver wire ad.
let me throw out a couple names kind of in that same vicinity. I'm just going off from my head where I was looking at ADP. How about a guy like I'll throw two Oakland Raider handcuffs, Jalen Richard, DeAndre Washington. Would you take either one of these guys over Jonathan Williams in a PPR league
I think I would. I think I
if you
would
could
take.
have them in the
Yeah,
same?
I think
Okay.
I would take. Honestly, I would take both. I think I'm not really a Lynch guy, and we'll talk about that in the AFC West preview. But I don't know. I have a hard time buying into a 31-year-old running back who sat out a year and wasn't looking great when he was coming back. Obviously, Richard is third on the depth chart. He would have been my guy. I like he's a better in pass catcher. So obviously, if I'm looking at the three of them, they're all sitting there. I'm taking Richard, but
Yeah,
I
it's a fluid situation
I
right
think
now
that
in Oakland though, because I read something today that Richard's number two. So you tell me, Kyle, we're going to see
uh,
that flip flop probably up until the start of the season. But anyway,
Would you take Marlon Mack, Darren McFadden, or Donta Foreman over Jonathan Williams?
I'm taking Foreman and Mack over Jonathan Williams. I can't do McFadden. I know there's we don't so much unknown right now
Yeah.
with
If I if
Zeke
I
and
if I
possibly.
tell you Zeke is
Yeah,
suspended for 3 games, are you taking Darren McFadden there?
I'm only doing that as if A, I own Zeke, and or B, I went zero RB
Mm-hmm.
and late in the draft. I'm looking for a starter early in the season, kind of in the same vein as say Terrence West,
Yeah.
if you believe that he's going to be the guy, quote
Yeah,
unquote. West will
him or
be earlier pick, but
yeah, and I have a feeling, if we find out Zeke's out for 3 4 games, Darren McFadden's all of a sudden boop, 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 up the draft board, and maybe he's in like the 10th round, and then at that point I'm out. Thanks.
yeah.
Um, let's
See,
talk about the receivers, and we'll start with Sammy Watkins. I feel like this is a yearly tradition. Everybody tries to get on the Sammy Watkins train, and yeah, I know he has a lot of skills. I love him as a player, but that foot scares the crap out of me. I talked about it a couple of years ago. The guys with Jones fracture issues, it always crops up. It always crops up. He had the full surgery, he got a new screw put in. He should be fine, but then he was dealing with an ankle injury yesterday in practice. Better now. Are you on board with Sammy Watkins? Is this a guy that you're going to be drafting in leagues where you know I mean,
you
late,
know,
late third round.
I guess I'm just an anti Sammy Watkins type guy. I mean, if you tell me that I can get, say, Brandon Cooks in that same ballpark, I'm taking him over
Mm,
Sammy. I know that there's so many mouths to
yeah,
feed, but my
yeah. I
thing is,
mean, that's
I
like a
kind of like to
that's like
attach myself.
a round later, but like Alshon Jeffrey, Allen Robinson, Devonte Adams, Jarvis Landry, Tyreek Hill are all going right after him, and then Pryor, Demarius, and Keenan are going right before him.
Yeah, I mean, the guys like Alshon and Keenan, I definitely will take. I feel more confident in those guys, even though they
Hmm.
have their own warts, than I do Sammy. And I just, to me, I don't see it, and maybe because it's just the offensive scheme and just the fact that Sammy's battled his own injuries throughout his short career, and maybe this will be the year that he does blow up, and he is that guy that you know vaults himself into the first round consideration next year with a strong season. But I'm just probably not going to be on him this year, and maybe I'll regret that later. But um, I'm not going to be on him because of the offense and because Tyrod Taylor just doesn't take enough shots to really make me feel good and warm and fuzzy about taking him that early.
Yeah.
Um, Over a guy like Adams, who we both don't really like. I mean, he's a guy that the touchdown regression is coming, but at the same time, he has Jordy Nelson throwing, or excuse me, he's got Jordy Nelson to compete with and Randall Cobb, but he has Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball to him. So, what I was going to say earlier is I kind of like to have those receivers that are tethered to those just prolific passers. And how much better can you get than, Aaron Rodgers
Yeah.
and none other than Tom Brady. I mean, these are guys that you want to invest in. Their pass catching options on those teams. So I don't know. It's just kind of that's the burn with Sammy is a great talent, very athletic, could probably catch anything thrown his way, but there's always just some reason that either Tyrod Taylor can't get him the ball or he's injured or he's playing through an injury and he's not 100%. That these are just all reasons that maybe he's just had bad luck so far.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. Like, I'm taking Keenan, I'm taking Alshon. I know both those guys are injury prone, but I just like them better as players. Obviously, Sammy's healthy. Sammy could be a top 5 guy,
Yeah.
challenge those top 3, but I'm with you. I don't think I'm going to have a chance to. I'm just not taking him where he's going. And, I mean, maybe if I get, Jordy Nelson and Michael Thomas or AJ Green and Doug Baldwin, maybe. I do like leaning receiver heavy. Maybe I'll take the gamble at that point, feeling pretty comfortable, but I don't really like to risk it that much in my top, 4 or 5
I think
picks.
Doug Baldwin's another great one you brought up there, Kyle. I mean, are you taking Sammy over Doug? Because I'm not.
No chance.
No way.
And let's talk about a little bit of breaking news up in Buffalo. They signed Anquan Bolden. This is probably not the best news for your guy Zay Jones. If you're looking at this team, and obviously Roman's gone, maybe they do throw a little bit more. Maybe there's a little more I'll be optimistic about. But at the same time, with Bolden there, with Zay Jones there, with Charles Clay there, maybe the ball gets spread around a little bit more. And I like Tyrod in terms of his fantasy potential, but I guess talk to me about Bolden and kind of expectations there, and then what that means for Zay Jones.
Well, see, I think with Bolden last year, I'll just start by saying this: the Lions, that was just a perfect match for this guy. I mean, that was just, and even with Baltimore, I mean, that was another perfect match where he had a quarterback who was a gunslinger out there, who could throw the ball, get it out to him, make those big plays, deep, throws down the field, and connect. So I think that was kind of where Bolden fit perfectly with those two teams over the past few years, where he was at. But now we're talking about him being in Buffalo, and I can't get excited. I can't get on it. To me, he's a guy that you're just pretty much throwing a dart late in the draft, and you're hoping it sticks. I mean, yeah, he's shown that he is, obviously he can score touchdowns. We know he can, but I just don't see where he's going to see a big enough piece of the pie here in this Buffalo Bills pass offense, which is already watered down as it is, with this running game being the emphasis in the MO. So to me, I'm just not really that excited about it at all.
Yeah, if they were chucking the ball 600 plus times, or 500 and something, high 500s, low 600s, there'd be enough volume to go around. But I think to your point, it's really hard to get super excited about this offense. There's just not enough throws to go. And obviously, like we mentioned, Roman's gone, so maybe that adjusts. But it's not like it's going to go from 450 to 600 attempts over one season. That's just not reasonable.
No, it's not going to happen. But
no, Tyrod's been a guy that can be decent for fantasy, though. Obviously, especially as a guy going really late. He's going the 12th round, QB 18. Is he a guy that, if you're in, one quarterback league and you're waiting, and he's sitting there, is he a guy that you're going to look at, or is there just too many other names in that range? Is it Carson Wentz, Carson Palmer, Andy Dalton's, guys that you're gonna go other ways when you're down that low?
Yeah, pretty much all those guys I'm taking over Tyrod Taylor, but I do want to circle back real quick because we didn't even talk about Zay Jones. I mean, this is my boy, so so as much as I hate these other options, I still do have some small glimmer of hope for Zay Jones in his rookie year. I feel like this guy runs really good, precise routes. He is ahead of the curve, I think, with the other rookie receivers for the most part, as far as being a seasoned 4-year starter, playing in a small school. I don't care any about that stuff. I mean, he's not predominantly a slot guy. He ran 29% of his snaps in college, or last year, I should say, out of the slot. So, I mean, he has more to his game than just running in the slot. So I feel like Zay Jones is a guy that's going to be still, with this news, with the Bolden signing, I think this may drop him down a little bit, and it probably should, which is fine because in redraft, I still think, as a late round pick, he's still a guy that interests me, probably because I'm hedging my bet with either Sammy not being able to stay healthy or Bolden not really making any type of an impact. So I do want to say I'm not dying. I'm not, sticking a fork in my boy Zay Jones because of this Bolden signing real quick.
Yeah, no, and that's fair. I'm no less optimistic because I think he's a very. I think like if you were talking about comps, I think Anquan Bolden makes a lot of sense for him. But yeah, if Watkins goes down, I think Zay Jones is gonna be a guy that I won't be drafting, but I'll definitely have on a short list where if I notice that he's playing well in the preseason, if I think that there's a potential for that offense, if I think Watkins goes down, he's gonna be one of the guys that I'm rushing to the waiver wire to pick up. Let's talk about the Jets. Uh, there's not a lot to be excited about here. Quincy Enunwa was that guy. He was a guy that people were able to get as a wide receiver one that was going to be late, that was going to get a lot of volume. Left practice today with a neck injury. He is out for the season. So beyond him, if you're, somebody's gonna be valuable here. Robbie Anderson obviously was that guy last year. Is there anyone if you're taking a flyer late? Ardarius Stewart, Robbie Anderson, Sharon Peak, Chad Hansen, somebody else. Is there anyone there that you like?
Oh, shoot. I mean, some of these names, they just, yeah, they don't inspire too much confidence. But I think it all starts with just the simple fact of us knowing who's going to be throwing the ball to them, which is, enough to kind of scare you away and make you look elsewhere when it comes to wide receiver options. I mean, for me, I'm not going to really look at any of these guys. I guess if there was one guy that kind of stood out to me, it would be Ardarius Stewart.
Mm-hmm.
He is one of the better, rookie receivers after the catch in this rookie draft class. But he has battled. I think he's had 2 off-season surgeries, hernia, I want to say, and something else, maybe a hand or something with thumb.
Yeah,
But
that doesn't
these are
seem
things that
ideal.
aren't. No, it's not ideal. What it does is it just sets Ardarius Stewart back early in camp, and he's not going to be able to build that chemistry with McCown, and that's kind of a bummer. But I could see this guy being one of their best receivers, maybe mid-season. So he's the
Yeah.
one guy that I think they can kind of use in like a hybrid mode and just try and manufacture touches for him, and he will make defenders miss. So I think that's a guy that I am interested in as maybe a late round stab or just dart throw.
Yeah,
Outside of that, I haven't.
I'm
Go ahead.
100% with you on Stewart. He's a guy that I drafted in the Scott Fish Bowl, guy that I've been taking later in best ball leagues, that kind of stuff. And to your point about his injury, maybe it's something where he ends up coming back and doesn't start right away, but ends up developing really good timing with Bryce Petty or Hackenberg or whoever becomes the quarterback
Oh
after week
God,
6, week
it's Hackenberg.
7. I know they're both terrible, but week 6, week 7, those guys step on the field and they built up that rapport with Ardarius Stewart, and all of a sudden he's stepping in and becoming a legit weapon. And yeah, I think that would be my guy. Now, other running backs, obviously Bilal Powell and Matt Forte are both still there, both great in the passing game. This should be check down city. Are you Team Powell? Are you Team Forte? Do you think they both have value in PPR? Where are you at?
They both definitely have value in PPR leagues, and I think everybody's already wrote Matt Forte's obituary. It's like he's dead to everyone, and
Not
I
to me,
think that
Ronald.
might be
Not to me.
my point is I think it might be a year too premature
Uh
that
huh.
we're writing him off, or a lot of people are out there. I think there's still going to be some value to be had with Forte, and I think it's going to be more of a. I could see them employing, more of a closer to 60-40 or 50-50 split if they're both being effective in their carries. But if there is one guy that's kind of outplaying the other guy, I could see them going with a hot hand approach. And I mean, by all means, we talked about the receivers and the quarterback situation. And I mean, that should be enough to tell you that they're going to have to lean on some running back and have some good running back play. So I think that's an area where they can succeed and they can get the ball to these guys and in open spaces. And I think we can still see, after last year, it was probably the worst year. It's as bad as it's going to get for Forte. So again, I think if people are reading into last year's numbers, yeah, he's coming off a terrible season, but they really went away from him, towards the end of the season. So I don't know if it's a mix of coaching decisions, or if they just wanted to hand more carries to Powell and see what they have. But he's definitely established himself as one of those guys that has earned the right to at least share, the backfield with Forte. So I like them both from the PPR perspective.
Yeah, I mean Powell's going in the 6th round right now. Forte's going in the 10th. Like, give me that value all day long.
Oh yeah,
I
100%.
think I think either of these guys could be in line for the team lead in targets, whether that's 80 or that's 90. I don't know, but I'm Forte over Powell. I still think there is juice. I'm with you there. I don't want to leave the Jets without saying Austin Seferian-Jenkins. The buzz is growing.
Oh gosh.
He's not another guy that I'm not drafting, but there's a lot to like there. I know people are making moves. I know in Coach
doesn't he
Escher's,
have like a 2 or 3 game suspension though?
yeah, and in
to
that
start the season.
yeah, and so he's out for the first 3 games, but that also makes him a guy that if you're a tight end streamer, I tend to do that. He might be a guy that looks real tasty come week 4, week 5. I'm gonna watch the preseason on this guy and see if there's anything there. I know in Coach Escher's league, one of our league mates just made a deal for Seferian-Jenkins. So obviously that buzz is growing. But yeah, I just wanted to mention.
You said Jets and Tasty. I don't know if they go together, but I get you. I mean,
there's
there's
gonna be fantasy points from that team. There might not be a ton, but there's gonna be some, and I think there's gonna be the running backs, maybe one of the receivers, and possibly a tight end. We'll see. I think the Enunwa injury, while that sucks for him, could be good for ASJ, and maybe it opens the door just a little bit wider. He can
Jordan like it.
Exactly. Another guy I kind of like.
Give me a Clemson tight end.
Exactly. Every day. I wanted to
We're throwing darts here, Kyle.
I wanted to save the last 10 minutes for probably the meatiest part of the show, and talk some New England Patriots. There's a lot to chew, and let's just start obviously with the wide receiver core. Brandin Cooks, the name you mentioned a little while ago, going real high in the second round. Julian Edelman's there, Chris Hogan's there, Malcolm Mitchell's there. In terms of the pass catchers, let's start with Cooks. Are you comfortable taking him in that late second, early third round range where he's currently going?
Not in the second. I don't really want any part of him in the second. I'm looking more towards like the beginning of the third or mid third to be where I really want to target him aggressively. And maybe that's not going to be aggressive, and I'm probably not going to have him or own him in a lot of my leagues because of that, because he's probably going to be going, like you said, more towards.
So he's currently going on ADP 212. From the beginning of July, he's kind of gone in that 212 to 302 range. So kind of where you're talking about. You might need him to fall a couple more picks depending on where you're picking. But that third round range around guys like Dez Bryant, Doug Baldwin, DeAndre Hopkins, Terrell Pryor. That's hard for me. I think people are seeing Brandin Cooks, they're seeing Tom Brady, they're seeing what he did in New Orleans, and they're expecting a boost. And I don't know that I'm on board with that. Do you think, do you expect his numbers to be relatively similar to what we saw in New Orleans, where he was kind of the show? Or, for me, I think there's a dip coming, and I think people are expecting it to go up, and I think it's going to go down.
I could see as far as receptions will go down. I feel like the yardage may be around the same area, so the same ballpark, but it may be a little less. But I think the touchdowns could possibly go up with Tom Brady. And I think that they're going to make an emphasis to try and involve him early on and see that chemistry. And to me, I just feel like with Tom Brady, I know it's a similar situation, high-powered offense, great quarterback. I just feel like there's going to be enough, targets to go around to fill all those mouths. And I think with Cooks, I could see the touchdown upside kind of outweighing the reception and yardage that we come to expect with Cooks in the Big Easy. So, that's kind of where I'm at. Taking him over a guy like Hopkins, to me, I'm okay with that. Taking him over a guy like Doug Baldwin or Dez Bryant, I'm not okay with. So I kind of draw the line in the sand right about there. And like I said, I'll take him before Watkins. And I'm kind of going back and forth with Jeffrey. So Jeffrey would kind of be a guy that, I guess, if I was looking for more guaranteed in targets and maybe higher yardage in receptions at the end of the season, I think maybe Jeffrey would be a guy I would maybe take over Cooks. But I'm a Jeffrey guy, so I might be a little biased in saying that.
I'm 100% a Jeffrey guy, and I'd rather take him, especially if I can wait, almost a round or two. I'll wait. I'll gladly wait. Yeah, I don't know. There's just so many mouths, and like Edelman, like if Edelman hadn't gotten his deal and he was shipped out or he was on the last year of it, like I wouldn't be as pessimistic on Cooks. But I feel like there's a lot to like with Edelman. They gave him the deal. Obviously, Brady loves him. There's a lot to like there. And then we haven't even gotten to Gronk yet, who, as long as he's healthy, and I know that's a big if, but as long as he's healthy, he's the number one option in this offense. And we haven't even talked running backs. Like there's just, and then Dwayne Allen who's in town. Like it's hard for me to pay that price when there's so many mouths. And I know it's Tom effing Brady, and there's 50 touchdowns and 5,000 plus yards, and all this stuff. It's really hard for me to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you hold a gun to my head, I'm taking the likes of Keenan Allen. I'm not taking Sammy over him, but I'm taking him over Pryor. That's for sure for me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Demaryius Thomas is kind of one of those guys where I'm just kind of, I want to see some of the preseason. I want to see this quarterback play to really get excited about drafting Demaryius Thomas in any of that ballpark we're talking about right now, which is that third round, back in the second to mid third. But
basically, if we can cut him down to like late third, early fourth, I think we'd both be in on him at that price.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
But I think kind of where he's sitting, it's really hard. And unless we get like an injury from Edelman, Cooks, or Gronk, it's probably going to be hard for Hogan or Malcolm Mitchell to have any sort of consistent fantasy value this season.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it's going to come down to, and it's going to be one of those week-to-week basis things, and you're not going to be able to. Bill Belichick's not going to care about our fantasy football teams. He's not going to
Ron,
show us
only
his hand.
if he did. You know how nice that would be. It'd make things so much easier.
Yeah.
We did talk Gronk on our tight end show. So if you missed that, make sure you go check that out. But if you draft Gronk, are you drafting Dwayne Allen where you need, or is there so much depth at tight end that you'll just find a replacement at when and if he goes down?
Yeah, I'm not a big guy on handcuffing my tight ends, and I guess last year might have made a little more sense with Bennett being there, and it did obviously after what happened and with Gronk going down. But yeah, I mean Dwayne Allen's okay, but he's not anywhere close to that level, I think, as Bennett, and obviously hasn't had the experience or the anything to that level. So no, I'm just not buying Allen yet. Sure, yeah, in a two tight end or tight end premium league, Allen's one of those guys you definitely want to try and get in roster. But outside of that, yeah, I mean, Allen to me is a guy I just put on my watch list if I have Gronk, and hopefully you don't have to make that move, because that means that Gronk got hurt again for the second year in a row, and you're going to be crying about it.
Yeah, no, that's something that wouldn't end well for anybody. Tom Brady, is he a guy that, do you consider him the number one quarterback, and are you comfortable taking him kind of in that middle to end of the third round where he's currently going?
Does he deserve to be a number one quarterback or taken in that area, in that ballpark? Yes, he does. Am I going to take him there? No. I mean, to me, I'm looking. If I'm going to go quarterback early, it's going to be I'm going to go hard and heavy after Aaron Rodgers. If I don't get him, I'll probably sit back and just wait, because I mean we've talked about it on previous shows about the just waiting on quarterback this year, and I think that's the best strategy to employ, because I'd much rather just start taking shots, at these guys that we're talking about. I mean, the Brandin Cooks, the Doug Baldwins, the Keenan Allens of the world, and Alshon Jeffrey. Those are all in that range where Brady's going. And to me, it's just, I mean, he's great, but is he that much better than, say, maybe Russell Wilson in, say, like the 9th or 10th round,
Yeah, team late round quarterback for life. I mean,
there you go.
I know he's not Andy Dalton, he's not Tyrod Taylor, Russell Wilson, Carson Wentz. Like these guys aren't Tom Brady. That's not what I'm saying. But the Tom Brady and whoever you can get, later in the 10th, 11th, 12th round versus one of those elite receivers. Even if you like Brandon, if you want to piece this offense, take Brandin Cooks there. Don't take Tom Brady there. But that's me. That's where I'm at. Lastly, Ron,
100%. Yeah.
before we get out of here, let's talk about the running back mess that is the Patriots backfield. Like you said, Bill Belichick doesn't care about our fantasy teams. They brought in Mike Gillislee
Nope.
to replace LeGarrette Blount. Dion Lewis, as of now, is still there. James White, as of now, is still there. They obviously brought in Rex Burkhead and paid him pretty decently for, third, fourth string running back. Are you drafting any of these guys? And kind of what are your expectations for this backfield in terms of how it shakes out?
I think I've been waffling back and forth with Gillislee ever since the signing. And then, we saw the Burkhead signing, and then, they're pumping up James White, and, Burkhead's now getting the goal line touches, the last report we get. So it's like the short yardage touches. And I mean, I don't know who to believe in. I don't think any of us can read this. I mean, we know that they are searching for a running back to take the rollover of LeGarrette Blount. But seriously, I mean, can we really trust that there's going to be one guy that fills that role, and it's Mike Gillislee or it's Rex Burkhead? No, I mean, you can't, trust and New England backfield do not go together. So to me, I'm not going to say I'm off of all these guys. I'm going to say that Gillislee is going to get too rich for my blood. He would be the guy that I would want to take and have some shares of, but he's just getting too rich for my blood. And I feel like there's going to be other guys in that same ballpark that I feel a little bit more comfortable taking and knowing there'll be a little bit more stability, consistency, what have you, than what we're going to get week in and week out from the New England Patriots running back situation, which, yeah, it's set up for what? We saw 18 touchdowns from Blount in that role last year.
Mm-hmm.
But are we just assuming that those are all going to go to Gillislee? And maybe not. Maybe we see a kind of a split role between Gillislee and Burkhead. So,
yeah,
I mean, who really knows? But
to your point, Gillislee was a guy going in the middle of the 6th. Now he's going in the middle of the 5th. Like, it's getting harder and harder to take him. I like him a lot. I think there's a lot of potential there. But he's going around guys like Dalvin Cook, who I'd rather have, Carlos Hyde, who I'd rather have, Spencer Ware, who I'd rather have. Assuming those guys off the board, you're looking at Abdullah, Peterson, C.J. Anderson, Bilal Powell. More interesting there. I'd probably take Anderson of the bunch. What about you? You're sitting mid-5th, late 6th. Gillislee, Abdullah, AP, C.J. Anderson, Bilal Powell are all there. Which running back are you saying, give me him?
I'm saying give me Abdullah in PPR league just specifically because I do think this is the year the guy breaks out. Yeah, his touchdown total may not be as high as Gillislee, but I think he makes up for it with the receptions, and he's electric with the ball in his hands. So for me, it's Abdullah. And I could see you making an argument, a realistic argument for your boy C.J. Anderson in that same ballpark.
Yeah.
So
for me,
yeah, I mean,
for me that's
honestly,
for me that's where I'm
yeah,
going.
go ahead.
I'm taking C.J. Anderson, and but yeah, I do like Gillislee. I think there's a lot of potential. I think if he kind of falls back towards that 6th round range, I think we're both on board with him at that point. But it's just these guys get bumped up just a little too high, and it's really hard to take them when there's a couple other players sitting there that we really, really like.
I'll say this, Kyle, and we did it. We were all guilty of this. I think Abdullah's rookie year when he broke off and had that big run, and like we started overdrafting him. I think the same thing could happen with Gillislee or Burkhead for that matter. If we see a couple preseason games where they kind of establish somebody in that role, or we see 2 touchdowns from Gillislee in the first half of the game or first quarter, in one of these preseason games, I mean, we could see that. And I think we talked about that with Ben Cummings before, weeks ago, is that he's going to continually rise and rise and rise, and that he's just going to be in a situation where he becomes, he's not value anymore. He's actually a risk based on his current ADP, or where he will be 2 weeks from now,
Yeah, 100% with you on that. If he gets pushed up into that late 3rd, early 4th, McCaffrey, Ty Monty, Joe Mixon, like there's just, and that's what happens with a lot of these high-powered offenses that people are really wanting to grab pieces of. They just tend to go a little too early. All right, Ron, this was a lot of fun. It was good to get this going. We will try and be live every Monday and Wednesday. We'll have all kinds of cool guests coming through. We will also still have our podcast. Make sure you are downloading and on on iTunes, on Stitcher. Please rate and review the show on iTunes. It really does a lot for us. 5 stars. Leave a comment. Let us know at FPAOP on Twitter what we can do better, what you want covered. We're going to be pounding through these. We will be back on Wednesday doing the AFC North with NFL.com's Alex Gelhar. So make sure you check that. We'll be talking Packers, Vikings, Lions, Bears. Oh, my. But for Ron the Mad Dog,
Go Bears.
I'm Kyle Robert, and we'll talk to you guys next time.